I woke up in an ice bath. Okay, that's weird, and definitely not how I would have chosen to be revived. I mean, if you were going to bring me back from the dead, I think I would have preferred something a bit more dramatic, like a kiss from a beautiful maiden, or maybe a really heartfelt conversation with my mum about how much she appreciates me. Don't get me wrong, being dead was great. Mum always said I should have been born a girl because I was so pretty. But now that I was back, well, I couldn't disappoint her. So I tried to make myself look as dashing as possible, threw on one of the silk robes lying nearby, and headed out into the hallway. It didn't take long for me to realize what had happened. The architecture was straight out of Lord of the Rings, except this place seemed even more decadent than Middle-earth. Orcs snarled at me from behind bars, goblins scurried around on the floor, and there were all kinds of other weird monsters that I couldn't name. In fact, it was every bit as fantastical as the novels by authors like Brandon Sanderson and Patrick Rothfuss that I loved to read when I was alive. Which meant only one thing: I had been reincarnated into one of those worlds. But that wasn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part was that I knew exactly where I was. This was the Obsidian Citadel, the home base of the Shadow Cult, and I was their leader, the Dark Lord Zarkon. At least that's what everyone called me in the original story. I remembered the whole thing clearly because the obscure citadel was infamous throughout the entire continent of Eldoria for being evil incarnate. Even the local bards made songs about how evil we were. The Dark Lord Zarkon was feared by all because he planned to summon the very devil himself and plunge the world into eternal darkness. He was an apocalyptic prophet, a doom caller, a harbinger of the end times. The only thing missing was his trademark line, which he recited whenever he was feeling particularly evil. "Fools, you cannot escape your fate. Darkness shall fall upon this land, and none shall stand against the power of Zarkon." Great. Thanks for the memo, Bard. As I walked through the citadel, I saw all of the things that had become commonplace in the original story. Like my massive collection of skulls, which I had personally curated to include the most fearsome monsters from across the realm. I could still remember how surprised I'd been when I first encountered them, thinking to myself, wow, they really went all out with the decorations here. I also passed by my private armory, which contained enough weapons to outfit an army. There were maces tipped with demon souls, swords forged in the fires of hell itself, bows crafted from the bones of fallen angels. Every single weapon was infused with dark magic, but that was nothing compared to the treasure room I found next. I was basically swimming in gold and jewels, but the prize was a massive staff topped with the skull of an ancient dragon. It was pulsing with power, and I just had to touch it. Immediately I felt a surge of energy course through me. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time, kind of like getting a full body massage from an old, hairy man while he screamed in your face about how filthy you are. Suddenly I understood why the Dark Lord Zarkon had gone insane with power. He ruled over the Shadow Cult with an iron fist, and no one dared defy him, not even the archfiend Belphegor, who had tempted him to summon the devil in the first place. But even though I was now in control of all of this, and I admit it was pretty awesome, I hadn't actually signed up for any of this. I didn't want to be the Dark Lord Zarkon. I liked my old life. Sure, it had its problems. My grades weren't great, my hair looked like a bird's nest, and I couldn't afford to buy Mom those fancy wrinkle creams she liked. But I had friends and family and a whole host of embarrassing memories that would never come back now. If there was anyone who could help me, it was Mom. So I decided to go see her. She was probably going to need some emotional support since Dad had abandoned us again. Wait, no, that was just a dream. I shook my head to clear it. No, she would be here, wouldn't she? After all, she was the hero of the story. I knew that. Everyone did. She was the one who had destroyed the Dark Lord Zarkon and sent his soul back to the abyss from which it came. At least that was the theory. In truth, she had barely even scratched the surface of his power. When she confronted him in the final battle, he had unleashed his strongest spell, the apocalypse vortex, and it had consumed her whole. That's why I was back here now, right? Because Mom had failed. Well, that didn't mean I had to follow in her footsteps. I could do things differently. I could show the people of Eldoria that the Dark Lord Zarkon wasn't all bad news. So I went to the throne room and addressed the assembled cultists. "My loyal followers," I said, trying to sound as menacing as possible. "It is time for us to enter a new era of peace and prosperity." They stared back at me blankly. What?" one of them finally asked. "Don't you want to, I don't know, summon the devil and burn down the kingdom?" "No, I think I'll pass on that particular tradition," I replied. "From now on, this citadel will be known as a beacon of enlightenment and compassion." Needless to say, the shadow cult was not thrilled with these changes, and it took weeks for me to convince them that I knew what I was doing. The good news was that my plan started to work immediately. People outside the citadel noticed that we were no longer trying to kill them, and after a few tense weeks, they started coming around to the idea of us being pals. Still, there was a long way to go before I could call myself beloved by the masses, and the first step was to fix the economy of Eldoria. I summoned a bunch of advisors to discuss the matter. Now, I wasn't exactly clued in on what was happening. I mean, the Dark Lord Zarkon didn't exactly keep an accounting degree on deck, so I asked them what our biggest expenses were. "Well, for starters, we have to feed all of these guys," one of them said, gesturing toward the prisoners. "They can't exactly get jobs, so we have to pay them to stay in their cells. How much does that cost us?" "About 400 gold pieces a month." "Easy enough. How about those gargoyles perched atop the towers? Do they cost anything?" "Oh, yeah. They seem to really like that gargoyle union guy, though. Don't ask me what it costs. You know how unions are." "Okay, what about all of those traps? Are they expensive to maintain?" "You bet. The dwarves want a cut of everything we plunder." I sighed. Apparently, the Dark Lord Zarkon had taken out a loan from the Dwarven King back in the day. Said he needed money to build a bigger and better mousetrap. Somehow that had turned into an annual interest payment of 10,000 gold. I guess that explained why he was always so grumpy. Now, the real problem was the prophecy. According to legend, the Dark Lord Zarkon would one day be reborn and try to conquer Eldoria once more. And if he succeeded, the world would descend into chaos and darkness. Of course, I was technically both the Dark Lord Zarkon and the prophecy itself, but I couldn't exactly rewrite my own story, could I? Unless I went ahead and brought about the apocalypse, I thought maybe I could fake my death again and live the rest of my life as an unassuming peasant. Not bad. I could get behind that. Then again, it was hard to argue with the prophecy. If I became the Dark Lord Zarkon, then the world would descend into chaos and darkness, and if the world descended into chaos and darkness, then the Dark Lord Zarkon would become the Dark Lord Zarkon. So it was basically a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning that unless I wanted to deal with an endless cycle of chaos and darkness, I had to stop the Dark Lord Zarkon. Who was I talking about? Oh, wait. Me? Nah. I was never going to let a silly little prophecy get in my way. I spent the next few years fixing up Eldoria and having the time of my life. We held festivals in the streets, established schools to educate the children, built orphanages, soup kitchens, hospitals. It was a truly remarkable time, and sure, people still occasionally talked about how evil the old Dark Lord Zarkon used to be. But at the end of the day, they were willing to overlook it. After all, it wasn't like I had a choice. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? Readjust my glasses and give everyone a lecture on morality? Come on, this was a fantasy world. The best I could do was try to leave things a little better than I found them, and I think I managed that.